sending you a new link at the very last minute, and thank you, Vicky, for staying calm and organising us all. That was brilliant. My name's Moira Halliday, and I'm the Director of Programmes with the AOEC, and I also lead the faculty team who run the Advanced Practioner Diploma. So that's what I'm going to talk about, that particular programme. You may or may not know the AOEC, and we have a whole range of programmes, but this is the one that we're going to be discussing today. As I'm speaking, if any questions come to mind, either type them into the chat or just hold on to them, and we'll have some time for questions at the end. I'm also here with my colleagues. Vicky Routledge is our marketing guru, and is looking after me and supporting us here in the background. And then Paul van Geyt is a graduate of the Practitioner Diploma programme, and there'll be a session during this next, however long we've got time, where Paul will speak about his experience of the programme. And we always encourage our graduates to tell it as it is. We don't want you to gloss over anything that wasn't enjoyable, Paul, so be completely honest and talk about what's great and what's not so great. So I'm going to talk a bit about the AOEC's approach. I won't go on too long in case you actually know us already, and that would be a bit repetitive for you. Talking about expectations, and then about accreditation and why accreditation matters. And then a little bit about what makes advanced coaching advanced. And then I'll give you an overview of the diploma, the picture of the shape of the diploma programme. And then I'll hand over to Paul to talk about his experience on the programme, and then open to any questions that you have. I'm getting a bit of an echo, Vicky. Is the sound okay from your end? It might be that I'm getting there's background noise. Perhaps if everyone could put themselves on mute. Yeah, great, thanks. So our mission statement is about transformation, and we work with individuals who come onto our programmes. We work with teams and we provide team coaching, but we also provide consultancy to organisations. So there's a whole range of ways in which we want to support transformation of people in context, and in executive coaching, the context is within organisations. And we really strive to have a culture which is ethical, and which is, this may sound silly, but it's partly why I say to Paul, tell it as it is. We're not interested in a sales pitch or putting bums on seats. We're not interested in just selling places on a programme. Sorry. I don't know what's happening there. We're getting something else. Yeah, so we're not interested in just filling places on this programme. We really want to communicate it to you in a way that helps you think, you know what, that's right for me, or do you know what, I don't think that's right for me. So so that's what we're about. And we're challenging, so we're challenging you to be the best that you can be on all our programmes. And on the advanced programme in particular, it's a kind of big year-long programme, which many people come on because they want to be challenged in their development. All our programmes are accredited by all the professional bodies. The advanced programme is accredited by the EMCC and by the ICF. The EMCC, the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, and the ICF, the International Coach Federation. And wherever you go to find a training programme that's right for you, make absolutely sure it is accredited. There are companies out there who are using the logos from the ICF and the EMCC, but they're only recognised by or approved by. That's not the same thing. So there's no point in doing a qualification unless it's with a programme that is accredited. That's all I'll say about that. That's not the same as being accredited personally as a coach. But in order to become accredited as a coach and go through that process, you have to have done an accredited training program. So do look carefully and scrutinise any training provider to make sure that the programs are accredited. And at an advanced level, we're expecting people to learn how to work systemically. So the coach is within a context, and we're looking at that context as organisational context, leadership context, managerial context. And we're also we also work to the professional bodies' core competencies, so skills of coaching. And whilst we expect on the advanced programme people have a level of skill, and our job is to help to develop those skills further, we're still within the competencies as laid down by the professional bodies. One of the things that we major on in the AOEC on the advanced programme is the psychology of coaching. So we're really interested in the underpinnings of coaching, and for you to discover and to think through what are the theoretical underpinnings, the psychological underpinnings of your practice. So that's the kind of thing that you're looking at as you go through the programme, through the year. So the coach has their system and their identity, and the client has their system. So their system typically is within an organisation, who they are as an individual within a team, working towards their business objectives and managing their relationships with other people. So the coaching relationship brings all of this together, the coach and their system, the client and their system. So the wider system, if you like, the world, and right now we've been experiencing one of the biggest challenges that the world has ever faced with the pandemic. All of that is part of what we're working with at an advanced level. We would be expecting that it's not just a kind of one-to-one interaction, but it's an understanding that the interaction is impacted by so many other complexities around both the coach and the client. And that question of what makes advanced coaching advanced really is something that we start looking at the beginning of the programme. So the programme starts with a day, an orientation day, usually in February. And then there are 4 modules following that, 4 3-day residential modules. And what we're doing here is creating a learning environment in which we explore together our inquiries around what do we mean by advanced coaching, what is advanced level coaching. So some of the things I've been talking about we would be expecting to be included in advanced coaching. And then, as I say, we major on the psychological underpinnings. So in module 2 we start to look at different models, different schools of thinking around how human beings interact and what goes on between human beings. And there are many psychological schools out there, many ways of describing those interactions. So we look at a range in order to show you that there are different ways of thinking around the psychological underpinnings and different ways of describing those human interactions. And we're not favouring any of them, actually. What we're really, really encouraging the people on this programme to do is to follow what interests them. Follow what interests them in their reading, in their studying, in their inquiry, and in their practice, and trying out new things and new ways of looking at things in order to be able to articulate their practice at the end of the programme in the form of a unique model. So this psychological underpinnings is also looking at who am I as a coach, What makes me the person I am? What are my values? What are my principles? What makes me prefer one particular kind of psychological thinking to another, for instance? What if I'm following my interests, what is it that interests me? And what does that say about me? And what are the things that I'm not interested in? And what does that say about me? And then the fourth module is about the business context of executive coaching. So we do some work around coaching together as teams of coaches within a simulation of the merger of two organisations. Because the core coaching skills are the same, whatever kind of context you're coaching in. So someone who's doing advanced level life coaching would be expected to be showing the same level of competency as someone doing advanced level executive coaching. But the context is different, so there's a need to understand how organisations work and a need to have a kind of a business mindset, really. So a lot of the people who come on this programme come from the corporate world, come from organisations in many different roles, from leadership roles to HR support roles. And also a number of people are running their own businesses and have decided to add coaching to whatever it is that they're currently offering. And I said earlier that people who come on this programme often come on the programme because it's challenging. So it's not unusual for someone to say, you know what, I've been coaching for 20 years and I realise I've got to get accredited, which means I've got to have a qualification. And if I've got to do a qualification, I want it to really mean something. So I want it to really stretch me. Other people have done our Practitioner Diploma programme, our 7-day programme, and sometime later think, you know what, I want to continue my study, continue my development. So that's why they would come on the programme. Some people come on the programme because they're transitioning from a career, a job, a place of work, and transitioning into being self-employed. And this is an investment in that business development, if you like. So lots of reasons for people coming on the programme. There are some people who haven't been coaching for 20 years. They've been coaching for maybe a few years, but their learning style is about continuing that process of learning through kind of structured or semi-structured programs like this. So a typical day on the programme is we start together in the whole group in what we call check-in time, which is a 45-minute session where we sit and bring whatever is here, whatever is in the group, whatever is going on between us, whatever our thoughts and feelings are. So it's almost impossible to describe, really. Sometimes that's very reflective, that space. Sometimes it's very active, very animated, lots of conversation. People talk about what they're learning, what they're struggling with, what their challenges are. And then sometimes, as I say, it's quite reflective and silent. And some people absolutely love it. They love the opportunity to just sit, reflect, share what's going on for them. And some people absolutely hate it, at the beginning anyway. And I remember one person, by the time we got to module 3 or module 2, I think, she said she'd had 3 days of starting with this open space, this check-in time, and she said on the first day I sat there and I calculated how much every minute was costing me because it felt like such a waste of time, she said. And the reason she was saying it on module 2 because she now got it, she really got how valuable that time was, but she hadn't got it at the beginning. So it's a very Marmite experience, but I think most people really do appreciate it by the end of the programme. But if you're the kind of person who finds it hard to just stop the busyness, then that first session can be quite a challenge. And then every day we have some form of input, activity, demonstration, which is about that idea of us as a learning environment inquiring. So we might be inquiring about the skills of coaching, particular skills at an advanced level. We might be inquiring about different schools of thought around the psychological underpinnings. So that's typically what would happen. And then after that, we would have some coaching practice. So you would be in groups of 3 or 4, and on nearly every day you would have the opportunity to coach somebody, be coached by somebody, be observed by somebody, and be given feedback. And those groups will change a couple of times over the year. And so you actually get a lot of experience of coaching different kinds of people, being coached by different kinds of people, being observed and given feedback by different kinds of people. So there's a real exposure, very rich learning experience, a real exposure to different styles that may be completely different to yours. And sometimes you might be in a group with someone, coaching someone who you think, oh, in the real world, I would never coach this person. She's just not for me. She's just not my kind of client. And the challenge is, of course, to go beyond that first impression, if you like, because for any of you who are already coaching, you know that in that bubble, in that coaching bubble, it's a real privileged space where you actually really meet the real human being. So that can be quite a challenge to coach somebody who perhaps wouldn't normally be the kind of person you would coach, or be coached by someone who's got a very different coaching style to yours. And I'm now just remembering some people who, on a program where one person was incredibly experienced, had a very senior role and had coached for a long time. And she was paired up with someone who had very little experience, was a lot younger than her, and just talk completely different, chalk and cheese. And she actually had the humility at the end of the program to say, I have learned so much from him. I couldn't believe that that was possible. You know, it's beautiful, actually. So opening herself up to learning from this person who was totally different was really lovely to see, to be part of. I say that nearly every day you will have an opportunity to practice coaching, and that's because from module 2, one of the afternoons is devoted to supervision. So a different grouping, we have groups of about 6 with a supervisor. And again, very rich experience. So if you don't already have supervision, you don't have that experience. Supervision is where you bring issues that are arising from your practice. It might be that you want to talk about a particular client or a theme that you're noticing, or something that's going on for you in your work. And supervision in a group means that the supervisor will be focusing on you and your issue for your time slot, but you also then get to see the supervisor focusing on one of your colleagues and their issue. So fantastic learning from many, many different angles again. So you'd experience 3 different supervisors for that group throughout the year. And the supervisors are from the faculty team. So we have a faculty team of a minimum of 4, usually about 5 people, and that would be to a maximum group of 22. Our maximum numbers are 22. That will change if we find that we have to be socially distancing for next year's programme. Of course, we don't know yet what that's going to look like, so that would be a much smaller group if that was to be the case. But at the moment, in the old world, our maximum was 22 with a faculty team of 5, which means that you get a lot of input from the faculty, because we rotate round the coaching practice groups and we give feedback too. And our styles are different, so you'll get different kinds of feedback from different faculty members. And what we try to do is give you feedback as we get to know you and your development and the development of your coaching model and your practice. What we're trying to do is target the feedback to suit you personally. So it's not generic. So you might hear contradictory feedback. You might hear somebody else being given completely different feedback to the feedback you were given, but that's about where they are on their journey. I hope that's making sense. So those were the residential modules, and then there's a little bit of work to do in between the modules. I'm going to start with the reading list, actually. Is the reading list on there? Yeah, the reading list is the last thing on there. I'm going to start with that because I always say that our reading list is about 3 miles long. It's enormous, absolutely enormous. And I actually know one person who read every book on the list, which I thought was incredible. And that's not the expectation. It's a little bit more like a library, really. And so that you can follow your interests, as I said earlier, you know, pick and choose which books sound appealing. It's also so you can share that chore with other people. People often set up reading groups, and somebody will read a book and then provide the précis for their colleagues, so that different people are reading different books and getting, you know, wider exposure as a result. We do encourage the reading, and for some people that's quite a challenge because not everybody is into reading, and we do encourage you to read in a style that suits you. So for some people, they read the book from cover to cover, and then some people will dip in and out of books, and that's absolutely fine. And while you're doing the reading, we would expect you to be keeping a learning journal. We'd expect you to be keeping a learning journal wherever the learning is coming from, on the modules, from conversations with each other, from your thinking, from your reflection, from your reading. So keeping a journal means that you're able to learn the skills of reflection, if that's not something that comes naturally to you, to be able to write reflectively. And it also means that at the end of the programme, when we have assessment assignments, that you're more able to actually fulfill those, and I will come back to those in a minute. Over the year, you would have four 1-hour one-to-one tutorials with any members of the faculty. You would decide who you want to have the tutorials with. You'd also be in those practice groups that we'd be setting up on the first module. You would be expected to meet with that group at least once, and many groups meet many more times, so to just keep practicing and support each other in whatever form that takes. There's also a requirement for 6 practice clients. So these are people who are not on the programme, but are people that you're either currently working with or somewhere in your network that you're providing coaching to. It can be pro bono, or it can be for payment. It's for you to decide how you do that. But what is needed is a contract with those people for them to agree to let you try things that you're learning on the programme, and to give you feedback about how you're doing with that. And the value of that really is that on the programme, you're working with colleagues who are also coaches and are also learning the same stuff that you're learning. So these practice clients are not. So it really helps you to be able to properly articulate what coaching is, and to properly give your rationale for trying out new ideas or techniques or whatever that would be. So it really helps you to hone in on the articulation of all of that. In addition to the feedback that you get from the members of faculty, we have Icf Evaluators, who are people who you would send a 30-minute recording to, an audio recording of a session, and they will send feedback. And that's really, really interesting because they're not on the programme, they've never seen you, they've never met you, and it's all audio. So it's just a very different perspective, and another opportunity to have feedback on your practice. So the whole thing culminates in an assessment. Now, I'm often heard to say I'm not actually interested in training people to pass an assessment. I'm interested in you being fantastic coaches at the end of this year, and there is an assessment. but often, well, usually people find that by the time they've done the work, they've got to the end of the year, they're really, really ready for the assessment. It's like a closure, if you like. So there's 4 components to it. The first one is an essay of the theoretical underpinnings of your coaching practice. Now, sometimes people haven't written an essay since they were at school or university or a very long time. And it's a bit scary, but actually we give you so much support in how to write it and what's expected and so on, that by the time you come to write that, it's really a lot less scary, I promise. And that usually happens in the autumn. And then in the spring, we have a whole day of assessment, where you make a presentation, a 45-minute presentation, which is about who you are and your model of practice. And then in the afternoon, you demonstrate your coaching. Now, by that time, you've been coaching and been observed coaching for a whole year, so that's really not anything new. It's very much the same as you've been doing. I suppose the new bit is that you're in an assessment setting, and whilst we're all very friendly and make it, try to mitigate against stress as much as we can, it's still an assessment, so there's always a level of stress, I suppose. And then the final part of the assessment is, after that, there's another essay, which is a reflective essay. So it's about your learning journey. It's about the process, not just from coming on the programme, but from life, really. Through all your reflections, what have you learnt about you and about coaching, and what makes you the person you are, where your values came from, where your principles came from, a whole load of things in there. And then from that, how do you then show up as a coach in your coaching practice? So this is where I stop talking and invite Paul now to say something about your experience. Paul, you're muted.
This should be better now. Everyone can hear me? Okay. Moira, there were 2 questions in the chat box already. Yeah, where should I start? I followed the Advanced Practioner Diploma in 2013, and I was already coaching for about 7 years. But as Moira told before, I wanted my accreditation, my personal accreditation, because the business required it. The business, more and more organizations, large organizations, requested more and more an accredited coach. So that's why I started with the advanced program. I learned more than I expected. Let me start with that. I thought I was coaching already for quite a few years, and without having received much feedback from other professionals, you kind of stay in your own bubble and you don't learn too much. So the thing that I got out of the advanced program was much advanced skill in coaching people. And the most difficult question that I got was, who am I? I need to answer the question, who am I? Who am I as a coach? Do I know what I do as a coach? And more importantly, can I support what I do as a coach with research? I thought I could answer these questions very easily, but that was not the case. I'm not a reader, so the reading list was kind of a chore for me. I thought it would be easy with the help of my triad, but that was not my learning style. So I read a lot of the books. And again, I was amazed how much I learned from that. The downside, when you have your own business, the downside of having to read a lot of books or choosing to read a lot of books is you need to spend some time in it. It's not quick. You cannot quick and dirty read some books and get the best out of it. So if you start a program, please allocate some time for reading books. The cohort was, let's say, an international cohort, which I loved a lot. I myself, as you can hear, am not a native English speaking. I live and work in Antwerp in Belgium, but my clients are all over Europe. And the fact that you can learn in an international environment amplifies even the learning for me. The attendees, as Moira said, came from all different industries, from banking, from government, large organizations, self-employed people, and we even had a few people from psychotherapy who wanted to enter in this new domain of executive coaching. A big part of the learning is unlearning, at least for me. It was unlearning what I did. And there was a good mix between being challenged and also the support that I received from my colleagues, from faculty, from the tutorial, from all the sources that Moira mentioned. If I'm allowed to give you a tip, please start with keeping your learning journal. Start with it. Start writing down things that you learn, interesting feedback that you receive, or feedback that puzzles you a little bit, but write it down because it will help you afterwards to write your essay, to write your reflective essay, and even it helps you to build your model, your coaching model. At first, during module 1, you kind of feel like, wow, it's not necessary. I will remember everything they said, but that's not the case. Just write it down. Effects of, let's say, the advanced program for me, the program, the learning experience was for me pivotal in acquiring my MCC credentials. That if I look back on this, I would not have been able to do so or to achieve these credentials. And as a consequence of having these credentials, I got more business. Nowadays, I admit business is a bit low due to the corona virus, but we will recover from this. And again, we have more time for some reading, some books, because there are still a few books on my list. Another tip is familiarize yourself with let's say, the core competencies of coaching, because you will receive continuously feedback and it's always meant to support your learnings. And I don't know if there are any questions, but please feel free, put them in the chat box and I will answer them as much as I can. And I can't see this chat box, I will put it.
Thank you, Paul. There are a few questions that have come in previously that both of you might be able to answer, but Moira, there's one about the practice groups and whether that can take place remotely. It might be worth saying about where the advanced run as well.
Absolutely, they can be take place remotely, because as Paul said, usually it's an international group anyway, and so meeting physically is more difficult, although people have had nice days out in Milan and things like that from the UK. Now at the moment we're running all our programs virtually anyway, so we've just run the first module of this year's advanced program virtually, which was incredible. It worked amazingly. And we will be trying to get back to working in person whenever we can safely. I was going to say whenever we're allowed to, but I think it's more important that we're safe rather than following the rules. And at the moment, the venue that we use is called Salomon's Estate, and it's in Kent and between Tunbridge and Tunbridge Wells. Beautiful place with beautiful grounds and a really nice environment to work in. And assuming Salomon's survives this time, that's where we will continue to meet.
Thank you. There was a question about your coaching experience. There's two questions about coaching experience, actually. One about if you have to have coached people at a certain level of seniority before the course, bearing in mind the leadership focus in Module 2. And another question, slightly different. Can I do this program even if I do not have a coaching training or stroke education, but work in the field of transformation in organisations?
Yes. So let me start by saying we have an entry process. So once you decide you want to come on the programme, you press the button and things start happening. And part of the process is an hour-and-a-half tutorial with one of the faculty team. And in that, the idea of that is that we're talking together to make the decision whether the programme is right for you and whether you're right for the programme. And we purposely don't have any really hard and fast rules. We're very open to having that conversation and working out with you whether or not it's the right program for you. So you may have been coaching but not have a qualification. You may have been coaching, you don't have to have been coaching leaders in an organisation. The focus of the Module 4 is not leadership but more organisational context. So you know, I'm just thinking about somebody I was talking to just yesterday who has a niche of junior first line management, because that's where they want to support the development of people in that organisation, for example. So absolutely no requirement for you to have coached people of that seniority. You may come from so you may have worked for years in a role where you've been using coaching skills but not formally trained as a coach. So we would be talking about how that might be, and what we want to make sure of is that you're not going to be out of your depth. So we wouldn't bring you onto the programme if we thought you needed a lot more experience. Or it might be that we say, look, I tell you what, go away, practice some coaching for a couple of months and then come back and let's have another conversation and see where you've got to. So that entry process was certainly helps. What else? I think that's probably answering that, Vicky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are two questions for me, apparently. Vicky, can I answer them?
Absolutely, go for it. Ooh.
Okay. So there was a question, someone asked me what my previous training was prior to the Advanced Practioner Diploma. And basically, I got a few days coach training with John Whitmore at that time in 2003. And I continued to coach, but let's say at a lower level of managerial, a lower managerial level. But that was all that I had. And I did have a prior conversation, an entry conversation, to just check whether the advanced program was something that would suit my development needs. So I hope that answered the question. And then also, let me have a look. Deborah, do you think the course advanced your ability as a coach? Yes, absolutely. I was not fully aware and fully conscious about all the different core competencies as a coach, and I was not aware where my development gaps were. So the course, first of all, made me aware of my development gaps, and secondly, helped me to bridge that gap. What did you do differently afterwards? Well, actually, you need to ask my clients. But what I felt is, in one way or another, I was more relaxed in a coaching conversations with the clients, and my impact grew. I don't know how this system works, but I was more relaxed about the approach, and the impact that I saw with my clients was higher. Do you think it increased your ability to win business? Yes, sure, absolutely, absolutely. There is no doubt about it. So it was worth the investment. By the way, it was one of the best investments I made in my life. And that's a bit of, Paul, did you go from qualification straight to MCC at ICF? No, it's no longer allowed. You first have to gain your PCC qualification if you have passed the the advanced program together with enough client hours, you automatically can apply for the PCC level. And after that, you can apply for the MCC level. There is an old reasoning behind it from ICF point of view. I'm not going to bother you with that because that's a separate dialogue.
And can I just add that the ICF is one of the professional bodies, but also the EMCC
Yes.
and the Association for Coaching accredit individuals as well. So, and they're all fairly different. So it's worth having a look at websites if you're wanting to go for accreditation to see which organisation suits you.
Yeah. Sorry, Hetty, to confuse you. I talk about MCC is Master Certified Coach, PCC is Professional Certified Coach. Those are the levels with experience at ICF, and you have different levels also at EMCC. Their websites explain this normally very good.
There are a few questions about credentialing, actually. You may have covered some of this. So we had a question about the credentialing process. Does this happen within the program or after the program? And there's a separate question, if I could just, because it overlaps a little bit, about the ICF core competencies changing at the beginning of next year. And is our program still going to be ICF accredited?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, with the competencies change every number of years, so we just change with them. They don't change so dramatically that they're not recognisable. It's often a language change and a priority change. So yes, we'll be using the new competencies when they come into force. So in order to be credentialed or accredited as an individual coach by any of the professional bodies, they're required to have done a certain number of hours of training as well as a certain number of hours of coaching. So what this program gives you is 125 hours of training, which means you could go into PCC level to apply to be accredited at that level with the ICF. And as Paul said, you need to have, is it 500 hours of coaching? For that level, yeah, in addition to the training.
There is a question from Lucy. Could you say a bit more about how it makes a difference in getting more business to be credentialed? Well, some large organizations, an example is one of the big fours, do not allow coaches if they are not credentialed, either ICF or EMCC credentials. So credentialing for large organization is a proof that you had some professional training and that you also have the amount of experience that's needed sometimes to coach their leaders. I hope this answers a little bit your question, Lucy.
And we're using the terms credentialing and accreditation. It's the same thing, it's just that different bodies use different terminology. So the ICF talk about credentialing, EMCC talk about accreditation. I'm just going to move us on. I'll pick up some more questions in a minute, Vicky, but I just wanted to move us on and look at those core competencies, which we would be we're using all the time. We use them to give you feedback about, but also at the assessment. That's what we'd be looking at. Are you able at an advanced level to attend to all of these different things? And I suppose for us, there's something about coach presence and creating awareness that we think are particularly important. A lot of the competencies are very behavioural, so they're about what you do. And I think at an advanced level, we need to be coaching beyond that, beyond doing the right things and ticking boxes. It's not quite as simple as that, is it? But and really attending to the presence, my presence as a coach. What's the impact I'm having on my client by just being me? What's my level of awareness about what's going on for me, and how do I use that data in a session, for example? And then creating awareness. Am I coaching at a performance level where I'm helping my client to behave differently, or am I coaching at a more developmental or even transformational level or even existential level. And one of the things that I find anyway with people who are well-established senior leaders in organizations, often their questions in life are not about behaviors, they're about purpose, or they're about, you know, something much bigger. I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve, now what? What am I on the planet for? You know, those kind of questions. They know how to write the finance strategy, or how to manage their time, or how to prioritize, or all those other things that sometimes people are working on in coaching. So creating awareness and being able to work with some of those big life issues, I think is really important. Right now, there's such a massive rise in the need for people to work on their health, their mental health, their ability to adapt, all kinds of things that are not about behaviours. So all of these things, I think, are pretty crucial. That's the end of my bit, so I'm now happy to take any questions, Vicky. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see everybody.
Thanks, Moira. Thanks. Yes, a few more questions coming in. Just to let you know that when I follow up with sending an email to everybody with a copy of this recording, I'll attach information such as the brochure that has information about costs in it. And our colleague, Mandy Golly, looks after the programme and all the logistics to do with it. So any questions that you'd like to discuss with her, she can go into a lot more detail about logistical inquiries you have, including the costing and pricing information.
Also, just to add to that, if anybody wanted to have a conversation with me, I'm very happy to. If you contact Mandy, she'll put something in the diary, and I'm really happy to have a half-hour, 1 hour chat with you. If you're thinking, I don't know, got questions that you might go away from today and think of something, a question that you didn't think to ask.
Do feel free to come off mute and verbally ask some questions as well. There's still quite a few in the chat that we'll try to get to. There is a question about the fuzzy line between coaching and psychotherapy, and how do you manage that?
That's a great question, and one of the things we do is explore it as a learning community, because it's got a different response depending on who you are and your context and your experience and your level of confidence. And I think there's a real challenge for coaches to get much smarter at working with issues that traditionally might have thought of as the issues that somebody would take to therapy. So as I said earlier, there's a lot of stuff out there right now about mental health, and there are programs for coaches to learn how to coach in that arena. So I suppose for me the biggest difference, well, there's two main things. One is the person I'm working with as a coach is usually highly functioning and you know, very able, and like any of us has some kind of health issue, mental health issue, addiction issue, concern, whatever it might be. Whereas in psychotherapy, often you'd be working with somebody who's actually not able to function because of whatever might be going on for them. So that's one thing. The other thing is about the contract that you have. I am a trained psychotherapist, and when I'm coaching, my contract is to coach. So I'm very, very aware that I don't just stray into being a therapist just because I could, because I have the skills and the experience and the qualification. My contract is about coaching. So it's always that boundary is never clear. It's fairly a grey area, but for me, I talk to my clients about what they want to do and where they might want to get to the support that they need about whatever the issue is. Of course, there are extremes of that. So if I've been coaching for over 20 years. I've never worked with someone, for example, who's telling me that they feel suicidal. Now that's an extreme version of that grey area. It gets less grey there for me, and at that point I would stop coaching. and do something different in order to, keep the person alive, let's say. Go ahead, Vicky. Any others?
A couple about the reading list. I know you do a new reading list potentially each year. Has there been a 2021 reading list produced? And also a question to Paul about the length of time spent doing the reading.
We don't do a new reading list every year. What we do is update it. So we make sure the latest version or any new literature that we think is interesting and useful goes on there. Some of the books on there have been on there since I did the programme in 2005, because we still think they're relevant, or we think they're still relevant. And, there might have been a revision since then, but we keep it up to date.
And about the rough, there is a question about recommendation, how much time needed per week, month. That's a very difficult one, but you need to know this is a developmental program. You only develop if you put effort in it, and as much effort as you put in it, the more there is a potential you develop. But to give you at least a figure, I would account for 4 to 6 hours weekly. If you do this and count in your practice group together with the reading, that's more than time enough. And you get all the support from faculty, from your colleagues, from the other attendees. You need to reach out to them. But with that figure, or that amount of hours, it should absolutely be possible.
We have had people who, we had somebody who did this program at the same time she was finishing her master's degree. Yeah. We had somebody who came on the program with her new baby, and her husband came to take care of the baby, and then at break time she would go and feed the baby, and they would stay overnight. So the woman never slept. She was, and she did the program and did brilliantly. I couldn't have done that. Amazing. So people do this program and have full-time jobs and very, very, very busy lives and all the rest of it. It's manageable, but as Paul said, you need to be a bit organised in the time.
Again, maybe one for Paul. Claire asks, the 500 hours that you spoke about during post the advanced programme, is that 500 hours during post the advanced programme, or can you use hours prior to this?
Yeah, you can use the hours. The hours start to count from the first day you start your education, but not hours prior to the programme. So,
unless you've done another programme.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you already have a qualification,
yes,
the hours from when you started that programme are the hours that count. Yeah. The EMCC, they do count retrospective coaching hours. And on the training programme, your coaching with your practice clients are coaching hours, and you can count all of those. The coaching that you do as colleagues are not counted as coaching hours, that's training.
A bit of a sidestep, a question from Lucy. Do you include any aspect of mindfulness in the syllabus, or perhaps that's left to the coach to integrate into your own model if you wish?
That's absolutely true. We don't in the core curriculum, but thank you for the question, because what you've reminded me is another aspect of the modules, the residential module, is that there's a space in the evening where the group decides how they want to use that space. And this is about recognizing that this group comes together and brings a huge amount of experience and skills. So on the first module, they put a kind of timetable together about how they're going to add to the curriculum that we present. And I'm saying they because as faculty, we're not a part of that. In the evening, we go and have a faculty meeting where we're addressing or attending to how we're working as a team, and how the group's doing, and how individuals are doing, and how the coaching's developing, and all of that kind of stuff. So while that's happening, the group continues the curriculum. So often somebody will present a session on mindfulness, or somebody might present a session on how to start a coaching business, or something about, I can't think of any other subjects. There's loads, I mean, just loads. Oh, psychometric tests and things like that. So also, or you might say, you know, I wonder if anyone in the group has got experience of X, because I haven't got any and I'd really like to learn something about it. So it's about a kind of bartering system where there's a negotiation process for people offering sessions and people for asking for sessions. We also have some support resources. There's a webinar on we have a learning platform, an online learning platform. So there's lots of resource up there. So we've got a webinar by, I think it is Liz Hall, who's the editor of Coaching at Work and is a mindfulness expert and runs mindfulness workshops for the AOEC as well. So there's a bit in there. And it's not for everybody, so.
You've sort of touched on it, Moira, but I don't know if it's worth just mentioning. I'm not a coach and I haven't done this programme, but I do witness the end results of people when they get together at our annual graduation and when I go on to have further conversations, because nobody ever tends to leave AOEC. And I see from an outsider point of view the bonds that people make on the programs and how people may go on to actually work together in business, but certainly strike friendships that seem to stay with people forever. It's a very nice thing to witness.
Very true, Vicky. Absolutely, very true. I still am in contact with friends from my cohort. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a massive networking opportunity. And people do, you know, arrange work for each other and things like that. But also the word transformation is used frequently in feedback that we get about the programme. That's people's experience. And I wanted to say that earlier and I forgot, so thank you, but it's an experiential programme. So that has to suit you. You know, you have to want to be in the experience. Not everybody learns in that way. I personally can't think how you can coach without it being experiential, but that's just my bias towards experiential learning, I suppose. But people do say, often people will say, I know you told me that I would learn an awful lot about myself, but I didn't really get just how big a part of the programme it would be. And it's not because we're running any kind of personal development program at all. It's very much about coaching and the way it's set up and that environment of amazing people coming together has some kind of magic, I think. Thank you, Vicky. Yeah. And it is lovely to be a part of.
Moira, Vicky, I'm going to leave because I have a back-to-back meeting scheduled.
Okay, Paul.
It's about to start. So I wish everyone all the best with the program, and I'm going to leave.
Thank you, Paul. Bye. Thanks.
We have actually reached the end of our hour, so we should wrap up. I just wondered if there's one more time for one question, because I thought it was quite a relevant question. Is there a recommended gap period between completing the practitioner diploma program?
Depends on your learning style. Some people go straight from practitioner into advanced. In fact, I remember one person who was on the advanced program before he'd done his assessment for the practitioner, which was a bit of a risk, but hey. So absolutely, and then other people want to consolidate the learning from the practitioner program before coming on to the advanced. It's completely a personal choice.
So I think we need to wrap up there, but thank you for everybody joining us today. Thank you, Moira, and it was great having Paul join us. I will send both Mandy and Moira's contact details to you all if you'd like to carry on any conversations.
Brilliant, thank you. Claire, you've got your hand up and I'm not sure if it's to say goodbye or ask a question. She's gone. It was to say goodbye. Okay, thank you everybody.